Hi guys, JArkhamReviews here, and I'm back with a DVD collection update. This has been my first DVD collection update in 3 years, and the collection has changed quite a bit, so I thought I would show you this for my 5-year anniversary. So, let's get started. To start with the collection, we have An Unearthly Child. The first episode of this is absolutely fantastic, while the rest really isn't. But it's a very nice DVD, especially with the pilot extra as well. The Daleks, 7 episodes and about 3 episodes too long. The Daleks is just a nice little historical piece to have. I would watch it again one day, but it has been a while. The Edge of Destruction, Doctor Who's very first base under siege story. It's very creepy in parts, and it is okay. It's just a nice little introduction to the Tardis, pretty much. Marco Polo, 7 episodes long, and it's a lost classic. All of these missing episodes just printed out covers that I've just got from various artists across the internet. This one's by Christopher's Doctor Who DVD covers. Keys of Marinus, very imaginative 60s story. The Vord, I absolutely love the Vord. They're one of my favourite one-time Doctor Who villains. A nice little one-hit wonder, but it's just really imaginative. Each episode is different, and if you like the Vord, I recommend reading the comic The World Shapers. It's my favourite Doctor Who comic ever, and it does some very interesting stuff relating them to the Cybermen. The Dalek Invasion of Earth, criminally underrated, I really think. A lot of people think it's kind of boring, but I really enjoy it. It's Susan's last story. It's a very good historical piece to have. Yeah, just very nice. The Crusade, absolutely fantastic, one of the best Doctor Who pure historicals out there, with Richard the Lionheart, and some very charming stuff with Ian as well. Here we go, this is rarely criminally underrated. The Space Museum, it's just so charming. It's a Doctor Who comedy in disguise. Episode 1, and the way it introduces like its way of science, it's very interesting, as Doctor Who hadn't really fleshed out its scientific lore that much yet, so it was very much touch and go, and they obviously just make up a load of shit and they believe it, and it's just really intriguing to look at. The Chase, one of my favourite Hartnell stories, I'll be honest. Every Dalek story with Hartnell is very, very different. The Daleks is a very low-key mutant survivor story. Dalek Invasion of Earth is them coming to Earth and being quite serious, and The Chase is Doctor Who comedy, and then the Daleks Master Plan we'll talk about later. But yeah, The Chase I absolutely love. Episode 2 is only the really bad episode out of this, but the rest is fantastic, especially episode 6. Here we have Galaxy 4. Mission to the Unknown. It's a single episode without the Doctor. It's okay, it's just a little prelude to the Daleks Master Plan, and it really should have been aired before Daleks Master Plan, not in between the Myth Makers. And yeah, that brings us to the Myth Makers, which is Vicky's final story. I've always thought her departure was a little bit odd, but yeah, Vicky's final one. Daleks Master Plan, the 12-part epic, one of the best Doctor Who stories ever. Marvick Chen is again one of the best Doctor Who one-time villains. Very emotional. Stephen rarely gets a lot to do in this story, just rarely gets to have some really emotional scenes, especially the fate of Katarina and Sarah Kingdom's family as well. The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, my favourite Doctor Who historical. 4 parts, and it's absolutely amazing. Very sad as no telly snaps survive from it, so we don't really know what it looked like, but the recon done absolutely fantastic by Loose Cannon. But yeah, the Massacre, Stephen, it's basically his story. Hartnell's not really in it that much, and yeah, I love Stephen. He's one of my favourite companions, very underrated. So yeah, Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, fantastic. The Celestial Toymaker, the most underrated, overrated episode. Everyone says it's overrated now, as it used to have this very high regard, a mystery behind it, but now everybody kind of sees it as a little bit crap, but I absolutely loved it. It's just such an imaginative story, and the Loose Cannon Recon guys done a fantastic job with it, making it as visual as possible. It's a very visual story. I would recommend watching the Recon, not listening to the CD. The Savages, which is Stephen's last story. Again, it's a very fitting departure for Stephen, but a little bit odd as well. The Smugglers, very minimalist cover here, but I really like this one. The 10th Planet, Hartnell's last story. and the first appearance of the Cybermen. Just fantastic. It's one of the best Doctor Who DVD releases, just for the special features and everything. But yeah, this is an absolutely amazing story. One of the best Cyberman stories. Lost in Time, signed by Peter Purves. Lost in Time is the best Doctor Who box set the Doctor Who has ever done. Up to this point, released 2003-ish, I think. It features every surviving episode from a lost story. Of course, episodes have been found like Galaxy 4, and of course, Enemy of the World and Web of Fear. But yeah, it's really amazing to have, and it's just a nice little time capsule, as you feel like you just have like this secret vault of Doctor Who stories. I really love this DVD release. The Power of the Daleks. I'm going to be honest here, it's one of the most average Doctor Who stories in existence. I'm not fussed on power, and the animation shit. The Daleks are done fantastically well because that's all they advertise, but Troughton looks absolutely nothing like Troughton, and the animation for the humans is just really dodgy. I hope that the next animation is done a lot better than this. Shard was a massive step up, so hopefully that we can get a better animation. The Highlanders, Jamie's first story. One I've yet to experience, but I'm quite looking forward to seeing this, even though it's meant to be a little bit average. The Underwater Menace, one I have entirely for collection purposes. Very just awful DVD release, but a very nice cover. And yet I have every single Troughton Doctor Who story on this shelf. Next up is The Moonbase. Absolutely amazing story. The animation, probably the best animation that they've ever done. The movie's just a fantastic story. I've read the novelisation, I've watched the story about 1 million times. Fantastic Cyberman story with a great mystery behind it, and the DVD extras are really good on this as well. The Macra Terror. One I've not experienced, but it's a very Marmite story I've heard, whether you love it or you hate it, and the Macra props are just hilarious. The Faceless Ones. This is Ben and Polly's final story. It's a fantastic story on its own, but as a departure story, it's very odd because Ben and Polly aren't really in it that much, and they only just kind of realise that they're back home in their right date and time and then leave the Doctor, which is it's a very awkward scene. But I absolutely love the Faceless Ones overall. Fantastic little lost story, and yeah, it's very noir, very noir. Evil of the Daleks, the first story featuring Victoria. I absolutely love Evil of the Daleks, one of the best Doctor Who stories ever, one of the best Dalek stories ever, possibly the best Dalek story. The Daleks in this have the scariest voices yet. Peter Hawkins is my favourite Dalek voice actor. Yeah, Evil of the Daleks, it's just a terrifyingly brilliant story. Tomb of the Cybermen, signed by Fraser Hines. Tomb of the Cybermen, it's again one of the best Cyberman stories ever. It's a classic. What more can you say? The Abominable Snowman. I finished this last week, and yeah, this has been my latest Doctor Who story I've watched. And The Abominable Snowman is very charming. It's a 6-part, but easily could be a 4. The last part is a bit messy, but it's very charming, and the Yeti is just adorable in it. They're meant to look threatening, but they're just not. The Ice Warriors. I love the Ice Warriors. I prefer this to Seeds of Death. The animation, it's a little bit hokey, but I quite think it's okay. Yeah, just a very nice story. Very good special features on this one. The Enemy of the World. I'm yet to get the recent special edition of this, and I may add that to the collections. The special features on this are non-existent. The Web of Fear. I think The Web of Fear was a good story. It's a little bit kind of overrated, but part 1's fantastic. It's one of the creepiest Doctor Who stories ever, just in the way it's directed. Yeah, Web of Fear. Fury from the Deep. One I need to give a bit of a rewatch, as it has absolutely brilliant stuff, some of the creepiest moments in Doctor Who, especially when they open their mouth. But I don't think it was my story. It's Victoria's final story, and her departure is very emotional, as I've rarely grown to love Victoria as a character. But maybe like Inferno, it's just not my story, but I will definitely give it a rewatch. The Wheel in Space. This is Zoe's first story. It comes directly after, and yeah, it features the Cybermen in 6 parts, which doesn't really need to be honest. The Dominators, featuring the Quarks. Again, one of my favourite little one-time monsters. I love the Quarks. The Mind Robber. I love this story. it's very interesting to have like a DVD cover that has a bit of Troughton that's red, as they're all kind of blues and greens, very low down. But yeah, The Mind Robber, I absolutely love it. Very imaginative story, just fantastic. The Invasion, absolutely fantastic noir story, about a noir as Troughton gets, really. And this is signed by Fraser Hines. Parts 1 to 4, you don't think it's a Cyberman story, but then they rarely just start to come into it. In parts 4 to 8 is just an amazing Cyberman story. Probably, maybe my favourite Cyberman story. They're just very good in it. Next up, the Crotons. The Crotons did end up getting a little bit of expansion in Doctor Who lore, especially in the EDA books, but you have to work out which one. The Seeds of Death. It's very enjoyable, lots of good stuff in here, but I think the Ice Warriors is a little bit better. But Seeds of Death has got some very good stuff. It's very classic 60s sci-fi. The Space Pirates, regarded as one of the slowest and worst Doctor Who stories ever. Yeah, I'm yet to experience this one. Not looking forward to that. The War Games, the 10-part epic that you have to watch in one go because you just can't stop. It's a fantastic story. Troughton's mightiest outing. Yeah, it's just brilliant. Love it. 10 out of 10 pretty much. Next up is John Pertwee of Spearhead from Space Special Edition. Special edition of this is fab with the special features. And yeah, Spearhead is an absolutely fantastic story with John Pertwee. Doctor Who and the Silurians. I love the Silurians. It's a brilliant story. The Silurians have a really nice moral dilemma between them and the humans, and the Doctor trying to bridge them between them. I love it. Malcolm Hulke is a genius, one of my favourite Doctor Who writers. I really love the novelisation of this as well, as a really fantastic prologue. The Ambassadors of Death. Underrated. I love the Ambassadors of Death. It's a very James Bond Doctor Who style story. The Ambassadors themselves are bloody creepy. And there's also some very weird stuff in it as well, as like how the Doctor gets to Mars very, very quickly. But that's all explained in the book Who Killed Kennedy. Terror of the Autons, the first appearance of the Master played by Roger Delgado. What a debut this is. Terror of the Autons is absolutely just fantastic. The actual Auton heads, always loved them as a kid. Always remember getting them on the Battles in Time card. Cause of Axos, one I haven't saw since I was about 11, so this is definitely going to be one of the next ones that I rewatch. Colony in Space, one I left out of my DVD collection update for Christmas, that which I do apologise for, but Colony in Space I'm yet to experience, so we'll see how that goes. The Curse of Paladin, in my opinion, it's the lesser of the Paladin stories. It's just a little bit dull, to be honest. But other than that, it's got some enjoyable stuff. I much prefer the Ice Warriors as villains, not the good guys portrayed here. Next up, the Sea Devils. The Sea Devils is with John Pertwee and again the Master. It's a very fun Doctor Who story. The Sea Devils are one of the best one-time monsters. I really don't want them to bring them back in the new series, as they will ruin them. The Time Monster, another latest collection, and the latest addition to the collection. Again, one I'm yet to experience, but I've heard it's very dull, but some people like it. And finally, for this portion of the shelf, the Three Doctors. It's wonderful. It's the Doctor Who's 10th anniversary special. William Hartnell comes back and you can just see the pride in his face as in his scenes. It's absolutely wonderful. I really love the Three Doctors. And Omega, one Doctor Who's best films as well, adding very nice lore to the show. Next up from John Pertwee is The Frontier in Space. Very underrated 6-part epic. The Master being the third part is a fantastic reveal. Yeah, and again the Daleks in it as well. Very enjoyable story. Planet of the Daleks, featuring one of my favourite Daleks ever. Planet of Daleks, it's another 6-part epic. I really love Planet. It's very imaginative in what the Daleks are doing. It's a very Terry Nation story as well. Carnival of Monsters, a brilliant classic story. What is the more to say? Yet Drashigs are fantastic. And the Drashig hand puppet is one of the best Doctor Who pieces of merchandise ever. The Time Warrior, the very first episode featuring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. Brilliant. It's one of those perfect Doctor Who stories ever. It's just so charming, and Sarah and the third Doctor, they just really hit it off instantly. Really good. The Monster of Paladin. I really enjoy the Monster of Paladin. I remember watching this when I was about 7 years old on UK Gold, very early in the morning. It's the better of the Paladin stories, and again, as Xia wanting the Ice Warriors to be like villains again, it's just a lot better. Planet of the Spiders, John Pertwee's final story, very emotional story, and it's a really good high for the third Doctor to leave on. Really do love this one. Robot, the first one to feature Tom Baker. In my opinion, it's a little bit overrated, but the K1 Robot is one of the best Doctor Who monster designs in Doctor Who history. The Sontaran Experiment, very nice two-part Sontaran story. Very weird to have a two-part Tom Baker story, but yeah, the Sontaran Experiment, very enjoyable. I think it was the first proper Doctor Who DVD I actually ever watched. Genesis of the Daleks, Doctor Who #1 story ever. Not quite #1, but brilliant in its own right. 9 out of 10 definitely. It's just a classic. Terror of the Zygons, another classic Tom Baker story. Terror of the Zygons was the final Tom Baker story to be released, and yeah, it's just really good. It's just very fascinating. Pyramids of Mars, again, one of the probably the best. Actually, no, not yet. One of the best Tom Baker stories. It's just brilliant. And Sutek is one of the best villains Doctor's ever had. Seeds of Doom, one I found a little bit to be overrated, but it's very enjoyable at its own rate with the Crinoids and how it goes from the Antarctic to the Stately Manor home. It's a very large scale story in that respect. The final story of Sarah Jane Smith, The Hand of Fear, one that I find to be very overrated. I don't really enjoy The Hand of Fear very much, and it's one of those I just don't really ever rewatch either. I don't know, I've tried, but I just can't get into it. Coming up to my favourite Doctor Who story ever, The Deadly Assassin. So creepy, and the Master and the Fourth Doctor work very well, especially this version of the Master, especially this is the height of gothic horror in Doctor Who. Again, just my favourite story, Doctor Who, 10 out of 10. Robots of Death, absolute classic. What is there more to say than that? It's just really fantastic in just its whodunit respect, and the robots are just very maniacal, and especially who's behind it all as well. It's just fun. Talons of Weng Chang, brilliant. I watched this at the start of the year, and it really set me off on a little classic binge of Who stories. Love Talons of Weng Chang, gothic horror at its finest. Image of the Fendal, one I find to be a little tiny bit overrated, but it's very fun with its gothic horror, and the cover's absolutely so menacing with the hex and the skull. Yeah, it's just brilliant. Invasion of Time, one I find to be very underrated, and this is signed by John Leeson himself. But parts 1 to 4, they're just really bloody weird, and part 4 has one of the best cliffhangers in Doctor Who history. Underworld, one I haven't watched yet and don't really have a desire to, especially with its reputation. Here we on to the Key to Time trilogy of season 16. The Reboss Operation, I hate the story. I just think it's so boring. One of the worst Tom Baker stories I've seen. It's just dull. The Stones of Blood. Actually, this is the wrong way round. The Pirate Planet, episode 2. I love this story. It's my favourite Key to Time story. It's very, very fun. I'm really wanting to read the book just to see what they change. Yeah, the Pirate Planet. Stones of Blood. Absolutely fantastic until the final part. It should have stayed as a pure gothic horror story. When it moves to the spaceship, it's just a little bit dull. Yeah, a little bit boring. The Androids of Tara. It's just not very good, in my opinion. Again, for this story, that Mary Tam's romance, absolutely brilliant, works fantastic with Tom Baker. Next up, The Power of Krull. I absolutely love this cover with the green, and it's just that brilliant with the TARDIS there. This cover. The Armageddon Factor, the final 6-part story to the Key to Time trilogy. Very, very creepy, very, very weird atmosphere of the story. Destiny of the Daleks, in my opinion, the most underrated Doctor Who story ever. I love Destiny, it's so cheap and shit, but it's good. I like it. The Horns of Nymon, the biggest Doctor Who comedy in disguise. It's very much a Douglas Adams script in disguise. I believe he was the editor at this time. But yeah, Horns of Nymon, it's just hilarious. Yeah, it's intentionally funny as well. Next up, Sharda. Sharda, that I have the normal release. I have no desire to really get the new one, to be honest. But Sharda's brilliant. This comes with the Paul McGann version as well as a DVD-ROM exclusive. I don't know why they just didn't do it on the DVD properly, but yeah, what can we do? Next up with Peter Davison. I have so little Peter Davison. He is the Daily Motion Doctor in the fact that I just watch his stories on Daily Motion. But what I have of him, Earthshock, I find this to be overrated. Part 1 is fantastic and part 4 is brilliant as well, but in between it's just very dull exposition. Great cliffhangers though. Time Flight. Arc of Infinity. A little bit boring, but I love Omega, so I don't care. It's charming. Doctor Who goes to Amsterdam for some reason, because I just think the production team wanted a holiday. Yeah, it's Arc of Infinity. The Five Doctors. This is the very first Doctor Who DVD ever released, hence why it looks very bloody odd. Five Doctors, it's fantastic, and this has 10 more minutes of extra footage for this version. Yeah, brilliant. The best Doctor Who crossover anniversary special. Warriors of the Deep. I used to love this as a kid. I used to watch this all the time, actually. But over the years, I've just become a little bit bored of it. Resurrection of the Daleks Special Edition. I don't know why these should be the other way around. But Special Edition. I've not really watched on the Special Edition, as I have just basically watched it all on the original, and the original covers a lot better. Blue suits the story a lot more than purple, but this has some really good special features on it. I believe this is the one with the overview of the 5th Doctor on it. It's very good. Caves of Androzani Special Edition. Caves of Androzani, it's classic. 9 out of 10, definitely. One of the best Doctor Who stories ever. Episode 3's cliffhanger is one of my favourite cliffhangers in Doctor Who history. It's really good. Just brilliant. Mark of the Rani. Very charming little story. Set in the Midlands of the UK. I like it. It's charming. The Two Doctors, which are signed by Nicola Bryant and Colin Baker. The Two Doctors is just fantastic. I love Troughton and what they do with him in this story. It's just mental, and I love it. Revelation of the Daleks. Part 1 of this is absolute shit, but part 2 is very, very good. Davros is very maniacal and creepy, and of course Davros is my favourite Doctor Who villain. And Terry Malloy is Davros. He's the best Davros there is. Next up, Trial of a Time Lord. The Mysterious Planet. It's okay. I've literally only ever watched a Trial of a Time Lord once all the way through. I just never really bothered with it again. But Mysterious Planet, I just remember being a very little bit dull, to be honest. Mind Warp, so overrated. I don't like Mind Warp. I just think it's so maniacally boring. Nothing really happens in it. But at least it kills off Perry, and she should have stayed dead. I just don't like what they do after, but poor Perry. I do love Perry. Terror of the Vervoids, the best story of Trial of a Time Lord. It's really where the tensions start to get very, very high, in where the Valiard is so obviously messing with the footage, or so we think, until it's revealed who the villain is, and of course the Master in the Ultimate Foe. It's very rare to have a Doctor Who DVD with a black colour scheme, but it very much rarely works. Very likable. 2-part story, it's okay, it just rounds it up. Dragonfire. Again, one of the most underrated Doctor Who stories ever. Dragonfire is so much fun. I remember talking to Sophie Aldred about this, and she said she really loved doing it, and her sons love it as well. Yeah, it's so much fun. Remembrance of the Daleks Special Edition. The best Dalek story in my opinion, my second favourite Doctor Who story ever, and it's assigned by Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred. My favourite Doctor companion duo, one of my favourite items in my collection. You can tell we're coming to the edge now. The Happiness Patrol, absolutely fantastic with the Candyman. The pink Tardis is a fantastic aesthetic. I really wish, though, it was in black and white like it was meant to be, because it adds like this fantastic noir feeling. There's some great fan-made videos where everything's black and white besides the Candyman, and it works in that aesthetic so much. I would happily watch this in black and white, just with just the whole aesthetic. My favourite classic season here, starting with Battlefield, bringing back the Brigadier and showing that he's not too old to do what he used to do. Battlefield's so much fun. The Destroyer is one of the best monster designs Doctor Who's ever done. Very convincing, and you could tell they were putting out all the stops for this season. Ghostlight. I love it. I love Ghostlight. It's very much, I believe this story was meant to be what Lungbarrow eventually came out to be. But yeah, Ghostlight, it's very convoluted, very confusing, but it's just batshit beautifully mental. I love the husks in that story as well. Curse of Fenric, classic. Watch the movie version on the DVD. It's a lot better than the episodic version, as it just links a lot better, and I think it has some cutscenes in it as well. Yeah, Curse of Fenric's absolutely fantastic. Ace's best character story. And Survival, the final classic adventure. One of my favourite Doctor Who stories ever. Perfect end to the classic series in my opinion. It just shows the character progression of the Master, the Doctor and Ace. It's just brilliant and very emotional. Last scene. And at the end of this shelf, More Than 30 Years in the Tardis. One of the best Doctor Who documentaries ever. Fantastic DVD release, and the special features are very good on this. I never get tired of watching More Than 30 Years. It's brilliant. And we come to the final selection of Doctor Who DVDs. First, the movie with Paul McGann, my favourite Doctor, along with Tom Baker, of course, the joint. Yeah, the movie is very underrated. Brilliant little insight into what 90s Doctor Who would have been. But the story ideas they had afterwards, I'm just glad they never done it, because the story ideas they had were really bad. Scream of the Shalka, I love this little 6-episode mini web series. They were meant to do more, but of course the new series ended up coming back, and it was done for the 40th anniversary, rendering this useless, as we would get more Doctor Who with the actual 9th Doctor. But Shalka is a very little insight into what Doctor Who could have been. Here we have my first ever Doctor Who DVD, and you can tell by how kind of bashed it is. The Daleks, the movie collection featuring Doctor Who and the Daleks and Dalek Invasion of Earth. Just some of my favourite bits of Doctor Who in here. I just adore this set of films. One of my favourite items in my collection. New series DVDs. I do not collect the new series DVDs because it's all on Netflix and online on Dailymotion, so I'm just not too bothered by them. But these ones I got back in 2008 because at the time it would have been the complete Davros and Sontaran collection. So it's just Series 4, Volume 2 and Series 4, Volume 4. Nothing too interesting there. The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever. I think this was like £1 and somebody got it for me. Yeah, it's just bad. The Day of the Doctor, the disappointment of the Doctor, and I really don't like Day of the Doctor. In fact, I would go to say I hate aspects of it. I do not enjoy the War Doctor. He does nothing for me, and never done anything interesting in Big Finish either. Wasted Doctor, in my opinion. They had the star power of David Tennant. I don't really think John Hurt added anything. Would have much preferred having Paul McGann back. Yeah. And finally, the Torchwood Complete Series box set. And this box set is signed by Bern Gorman, Gareth David Lloyd and Eve Miles. I absolutely adore Torchwood. My favourite Doctor Who spin-off. So I'd like to thank you all very much for watching this very long DVD collection video. If you made it to the end, congratulations. I have more collection videos to come, and my next one will be my big Finish collection, and I also have my Q&A coming as well, so please look out for that. So thanks for watching, guys, and be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at JArkhamReviews. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.